Hey guys, OG Albini here, bringing you guys our first Draft League video of Generation 9 in Scarlet and Violet. So I'm going to be a part of the BBR this upcoming season, and I myself and Jesse504, J-Bear, who will also be linked in the description of this video, are in charge of the tiering this season. We are making the tiers, making the Tera captain rules, all that good stuff. So in order to be more prepared and try and have the most objectively competitive league possible while trying out the new stuff and making sure it's a good time for all the coaches and the the people at home watching, we are running little speed tours and things like that to kind of get a gauge on how bunk and messed up our tiers are, or what we have in tiered correctly, what needs to be banned, what can probably be allowed, and things like that. So we're doing a speed tour. This is going to be our first one that we did just tonight as of me recording this. Jesse's going to be uploading his run as well, so if you want to check him out in the descriptions below, I would appreciate if you did so. And yeah, we're going to go over our team, and we're going to go over the tour and how everything ended up panning out. If you guys do enjoy, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as sub to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs, and I would really appreciate it if you help me out along that goal. And yeah, it's time for some Generation 9 Draft League content, which is pretty awesome. So that being said, we can go ahead and start jumping into it. So in this speed tour, we had 8 people participating, which is about the same as we'll have in the BBR per draft pool. We're gonna have 9 people per draft pool in the BBR, and then we get 8 in the speed tour. So it really does kind of end up working out the same. I personally had 7th pick overall, so I wasn't getting anything super broken at the top of the board. But honestly, I'm fine with that because, spoilers, my pick in BBR is very high. So I kind of wanted to test out and see how the lower tiers ended up working out and making sure that we don't have anything too crazy down there, right? So going in with the 7th pick, really the best one left on the board, in my personal opinion, was Great Tusk, which is going to be our future Paradox Donphan. A really fun Pokemon, whether it be an absolute behemoth with his physical attack, being very bulky with 115, 131, and 53 def, but with an AV, it can be very much so patched up. 87 speed is deceptively fast, especially when you figure out this thing has access to Rapid Spin, on top of great stabs and Headlong Rush or Earthquake, as well as close combat, which is great. It can bulk up to set up. It has Fang coverage. It gets knockoff, which is incredible. Iron Head, Heavy Slam, Ice Spinner, which is also really nice. Rock Slide. It can Stealth Rock. It can Taunt if you wanted to for some reason. It gets Zen Headbutt, Play Rough, Mega Horn. So it has phenomenal coverage, is really solid offensively, and is very hard to switch into, and very hard to OHKO and win. Photosynthesis, we can get along with like some booster energy shenanigans, maybe get an attack boost, and then throw off, essentially free +1 band boosted hits, and maybe with Rapid Spin off, we can get off a sweep, things like that. So I figured it'd be a really fun mod to build around, and I figured there was a lot of cool pairings down lower in the tiers, or not lower in the, round 1, round 2-ish draft war that we get some pretty cool pseudo wheels with. And I end up going with Iron Moth next, really breaking through a lot of fighting resist super well here for our Great Tusk, particularly bulkier fairies. If they want to try and come in on us, they're gonna have to deal with a potential Iron Moth, which is great. Iron Moth also can, get free U-turns out into Great Tusk, which is great. Sludge Wave plus Fiery Dance is really solid offensively. It also has still access to, Bug Buzz. It gets Dazzling Gleam. It gets Discharge and Energy Bolt to hit bulky waters, which is great in baiting those things in, making those things take damage for Great Tusk to go to work. It can Toxic Spikes, which is nice. Overheat's a great nuke. Morning Sun for reliable recovery. I actually think this Pokemon is very much so slept on. Again, another Pokemon that can benefit from Booster Energy. If you want to go Booster Energy, get a special attack raise, and then set up with an Agility and try and win with +1, +2 speed. Very viable, and again, Fire Dance can go ahead and boost that as well. So overall, the Pokemon has phenomenal coverage, in all honesty, and really pairs well with Great Tusk, but something that they both really struggle with is going to be bulky waters. So Rotomo is a phenomenal pairing for that. I kind of dipped and went and got this a little bit early, but I felt like it was very important to my team to have a Pokemon that could, again, really break through waters, but also with a very solid ground resist / immunity for our Iron Moth right here. There is no ground type that can really hit it right now. I'm kind of blanking on Mold Breaker mons, but I know Zygarde is in the game, so we don't have to worry about getting an Arrows resist, which is also very nice. It Volt switches around, it Will-O-Wisp, it can do all of that fun stuff. It did lose access to Defog and Painslet, which is pretty unfortunate, but these Pokemon in general are still very solid. It can Nasty Plot, it can do a ton of things like that. Again, spread lots of status so that our top 2 mons can really thrive and put themselves in good positions. I also grabbed Azumarill here. It's going to be great for bulky Psychics that want to try and take on Iron Moth as well as Great Tusk. It also gets free U-turns out on fairy types for Iron Moth to come. It also forces damage on said fairy types so that our Great Tusk can do some work. It did lose access to Roost, but it gives me Stealth Rock. It is my first, or my second Stealth Rocker, taking a little bit of pressure off of Great Tusk, which is obviously very, very nice. It can still nasty plot up. It can still throw off big, great coverage moves and things like that. It can U-turn around. It can be Scarf, Specs. It can be bulky-ish. Not without Roost, not as well. But it can also nasty plot. It can even Dragon Dance if you want it to. So I think that's definitely a really cool aspect of Hydreigon here in this metagame, or at least on this team for sure. Next up is a Pokemon I really think is going to be incredibly slept on in the Draft League format, and I think it has incredible value this generation in Azumarill. Not for its incredible offensive huge power, which it definitely can take advantage of. What I think Azumarill is so good at in this metagame is its defensive typing, checking so many top tier threats, whether it be offensive fightings, offensive darks, offensive dragons, which seem to be in the masses this generation. It seems like there's so many of them, and Azu checks them very well defensively, whether it be with Assault Vest variants, Rest Talk variants. It is very liable to get worn down, but again, it's very strong. It's a good offensive tank, like pivot into these big threats, and can kind of reset tempo into your favor if your opponent doesn't predict you, and either you turn out and get that double, you're in a good spot, and you can force some pretty good mind games with that. So I really do like Azu a lot. It did lose knockoff, unfortunately, but it does have great coverage overall. With Ice Spinner, I believe superpower still against Jet and Liquidation and Play Rough. It can still Belly Drum if you really need it to. It can be Band, it can be AV, it can be Sap Sipper. It can do a lot of really good things. I don't think it can Whirlpool anymore. It cannot Whirlpool Parastrap anymore. It's also a big nerf to it, but overall, I think its function still serves phenomenally. Now, speaking of said dragons and things like that, they're very prevalent in this metagame, and I want to take a little bit of pressure off of Azu and checking them, especially being that the team we have so far. So I ended up picking up Bronzong as another solid Stealth Rocker, again, taking pressure off things like Hydreigon and Great Tusk, who often won't want to Stealth Rock. Having this thing is going to be pretty darn cool. Being able to rock up is really clutch. It can also maybe even throw us future sights. It can Trick Room into things like Azu if we want to. Maybe even Great Tusk. Who knows? That's solid coverage overall. It's just a great defensive pivot and can, rock up pretty safely. The only issue is it doesn't have, what do you call it anymore? Toxic, which is a big downside to Bronzong. But it does, like, Body Press and, like, Iron Defense Body Press sets are cool. I've even run Double Dance on Bronzongs before and swept their teams with, like, stored powers. So it's a Pokemon I'm very comfortable with using. It's a very standard, slow, bulky rocker pivot type mon, but it does its job very well, so I'm happy to have it on this team. We also have Garganackle, if I'm saying its name right, Gargamel from the Smurfs, which is a pretty cool Pokemon in my opinion. I really do like it. It's a built-in ghost resist, so it can't be status, and its ghost powers against it is halved, which is awesome, but it can also rock out with Sturdy or Clear Body, both phenomenal abilities. It has incredible bulk with 100, 130, 90 with access to Recover. There we go. It has access to Edgequake. It has access to Body Press. It does get access to Elemental Punches, which is also nice. It also has like a Salt move that I forget. Salt Cure, which is going to only be a 40 base power physical rock move, but it deals 1/4 of max HP damage to the Pokemon that comes in on it. And it does 1/4 if it's a Steel or Water type, which can be really nice on a team that really appreciates chip on those Pokemon. But on top of that, also, that's what's going to be forced in a lot on Garganackle, or it typically would be. Maybe it makes your opponent think twice, and you could be, a little bit more cheeky with this guy right here. So I think this Pokemon's pretty slept on. I like it a lot. Then I wanted a Ghost Immunity, because there were some really scary things in this tier, in this metagame, particularly Ghosts, and there wasn't a lot of bulky normals left. It was really tough to find one. But I ended up settling on grabbing a Dunsparce. That sounds really dumb, but however, hear me out. Eviolite is a possibility on Big Dunsparce. Now, 100 HP, 70-65 bulk. That's really solid with access to Roost, Glare, and solid coverage overall because it is an old gen Pokemon. This thing can be really annoying. It's also another rocker, which is always a good thing. So, yeah. Then I wanted a little bit of a speed. Or no, I have 110 around there. I wanted Spikes. That's what I wanted. So we ended up grabbing Froslass. Doesn't double up on any typings for us. And I really wanted that Spikes aspect of my team for things like Great Tusk and Iron Moth and Hydreigon and all that fun stuff. It's a solid, fast utility mod. It did lose access to Triple Axle and Poltergeist, so offensively, it is incredibly, so much worse this generation, because now you know that physical Froslass likely is not coming anymore, but special variants are still going to be very solid, and it's going to get up Spikes, taunt things, Destiny Bond, Wisp things, maybe even Thunderwave, do a bunch of things, maybe even rock out with the Specs variant if, a team doesn't have the answers for it. So definitely excited for Frost Ice here. And then from this point, it was kind of when we realized we gave way too much budget for this draft. Now, we kind of just copied over from NCP last season in Galar, where we had 120 points, and the text is a little bit more evenly distributed. In this one, we did 120 points, and at this point, I was like, I don't even need anything, and I have like 22 points left. Like, I really don't need anything on this team at this point anymore. So, the first executive decision we made during the draft was that we are going to be lowering BVR from the budget from 120 to 110. So that's going to be very nice. But that being said, might as well talk about the last 2 months. First is going to be Iron Thorns. It just looked fun. I'll be honest, I already have the rock. I already have the electric, I think. Right? Do I have an electric? Yeah, I already have the electric. But it looked like a lot of fun, and I wanted to use it with DD and great coverage and rocks and spikes. It's just a great Pokemon. It can also SD, it can taunt, it can volt switch for momentum. So that's really, really solid. And I have good pivots into ground types right now and good ways to pressure them offensively. So that's going to be really cool. This is also a consideration for my Tera captain. I'll talk about Tera captains and what we decided to do with that ruling in a bit. Then, lastly, we have Espathra. This Pokemon just, again, looked fun. I don't really need anything at this point. I don't have a Psychic, and it was in the point value. It has 2 really cool abilities in Opportunist and Speed Boost. Even Frisk is great in Draft League, but these other abilities are probably going to be its bread and butter. Speed Boost is obviously phenomenal, giving it a Speed Boost, making it, a really fast, strong offensive threat. Opportunist is a new ability that allows it to, when an opposing Pokemon receives boost, to copy it, which is nice. And obviously Frisk is okay. There's a really cool signature move in Lumina Crash, which is a 80 base power special psychic type move that lowers the target's def by 2 stages, which is really, really cool depending on the steel on the opponent's team. You can really start breaking through. And we have Dazzling Gleam for dark types. We have Energy Ball. We even have like Hex and Shadow Ball, I think. Do you have Shadow Ball? We do. We have Trick. We have U-Turn for momentum, which is also, again, phenomenal. We can Roost Up. We can Calm Mind if we want. That's not the bulkiest thing at all. We can also Agility. So there's a lot of fun things that this Pokemon can do. I think it's pretty cheesy, but I think it could be a lot of fun. But yeah, with that being said, we can go ahead and jump on into our first game. Alrighty, first battle. Now, before we jump into first battle, though, I do want to really quick mention, I totally forgot to talk about how we're going to be approaching terrestrializing and things like that in this draft league. We don't know yet 100%, right? Because the mechanic seems incredibly, incredibly oppressive as of right now. But we obviously want to do our best to try and find a way to make this mechanic work. So our first idea for this tour is going to be that we're going to have Tera captains with a max of 2 of them. Now, you can't pick any 2 Pokemon you want. You can use up to 18 Tera points, and the points correlate to how much a Pokemon is. For example, Great Tusk here, who is our Tera captain, is 17 points on the draft board. So that means I have 1 leftover Tera point if I want to use it on a 1-point Pokemon. Unfortunately, I don't have another 1-point Pokemon, so I am just Tera Ground Great Tusk, and you have to declare your typing after the draft. So you basically get 1 to 2 captains, and you have to set their typing for the season. That is our way of restricting it for now. We're still reviewing on how much we like that, and if we want to restrict it further or open it up further. But that's the rules for this tournament at the very least. So our Great Tusk can go ahead and Tera Ground. Now, we can talk about Liv's team really quick, because hers is a little bit different. She has a pretty cool squad that should be on your screen that consists of Chi-Yu, Quaquaval, Scizor, Gengar, Flamigo, Gardevoir, Arbolivia, Weavile, Haxorus, which is Tera Dragon, Tinkaton, which is Tera Ground, and Wishcash. So, really, really threatening squad. Chi-Yu can be very, very scary, especially being that Hydreigon no longer has access to Roost. That would have been a phenomenal check to it. And my Azumarill is kind of pigeonholed into being very physically defensive in a matchup like this to take on things like Quaquaval and Weavile. Again, kind of showing how anti-meta Azumarill really is. When we check 3 of her 4, or like 3 of her best Pokemon on our own. Same thing with Haxorus. We check the heck out of Haxorus. We check Tinkaton even. Like, with a physically defensive variant, that thing's not very strong. We check Flamigo. We even check, like, more defensive Scizors if they're not SD. But I don't really expect that, to be completely honest. So, really, the Chi-Yu matchup is kind of what scares me the most, because I don't have the most solid defensive counterplay to it, but we can talk about it. Our first member is just going to be this 4 attacks Yachi Berry Great Tusk here. It does incredible offensively. Very, very strong Pokemon. We are just 4 attacks offensive. If we get off a Rapid Spin, not only is it great hazard and control for Liv if she tries to get spikes with her Wishcash or something of the likes, once we get up to +1, we outspeed everything and can almost OHKO everything after a little bit of chip with Headlong, Close Combat, and our Headlong Rush, Close Combat, and Play Rough just does very, very well offensively. Next up, we have physically defensive Restock Azumarill. We are still huge power. I still wanted that somewhat offensive presence because it's still hard to switch into an Azumarill, even if it is not very invested at all with huge power. And I didn't see much use out of going Thick Fat, as we do check nerfed Weavile very well. Same thing with Quackleval throwing off like Ice Spinner. We didn't really need that, and Sap Super didn't make much sense because we lose to Arbolivia most of the time anyways. It kind of stalls us out. So I figured huge power was still worth it, but it is here to check those aforementioned 4 big threats to my team in the Chi-Yu, Quackleval, Flamigo, Haxorus, Tinkaton, Weavile. So 6 Pokemon out of like her 11. So Azu is phenomenal in this game. We also have a Heavy Duty Boots Sub Morning Sun Iron Moth with its dual stabs. Sludge Wave Fiery Dance is really, really solid again in this matchup. I believe we EV'd to take a Scarf Psychic from Gardevoir with our HP right there. And then we just have Max Attack the Gengar and the rest of our special attack. If we start getting some boosts, this thing's going to be really, really scary to deal with. If we're behind a sub, something like Scarf Quackleval or just like Bandit Aqua Jet can't really pick us off. We can knock it out with a +1 Sludge Wave. And again, our dual stab is just unresisted. And nothing takes on its dual stab very well. So Iron Moth is looking to go pretty crazy this game. We have Yachi Berry, just fast max HP Rotom to check things like the Quackleval and Volt Switch around, be a general nuisance. Check things like Scizor with Scizor's Bullet Punch and things like that. We can soft check and lure the Weavile to either finish it off with a Leaf Storm if it's low enough, or go ahead and Will-O-Wisp it or something like that, or even get off a slow Volt Switch. So again, solid Pokemon. We can always take a hit from Flamigo as well and deal with it accordingly. We have a Choice Scarf Hydreigon with Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, Flamethrower, and U-Turn. It's a nice Chi-Yu check in the sense that it outspeeds non-Scarf variants, as it is just a base 100 speed. So if it does outspeed us, we know it's Scarf. Also good information. Scarf for that outspeeds Quackleval at +1. It outspeeds Gengar, which is really nice. It's a Scarf for that outspeeds Gardevoir. We can revenge things like Weavile potentially. We can revenge a Dragon Dance up Haxorus with a Draco Meteor. Like, there's a lot of things that we can do here with our Hydreigon and kind of go from there. Then lastly, we're actually rocking out double Scarf with Scarf Iron Thorns here with Rock Slide, Wild Charge, Fire Punch, and Earthquake. This is going to be our lead. This Pokemon can essentially trade 1-for-1 with almost everything on our opponent's team, especially if we catch Liv off guard and she expects to knock us out with something. We can knock her out with an Iron Thorns and kind of just trade 1-for-1. I didn't really have a 4th member that I really wanted. I wanted to have a Rocks variant of this, but I figured it was just honestly a little bit too slow to be worth, and I couldn't pick a Resist Berry that I actually wanted, so I ended up not, doing so. So, yeah, that is going to be the team. Let's go ahead and jump right into the battle itself, which is going to be on your screen. You see the Liv ended up bringing Quackleval, Tinkaton, the Chi-Yu, is that its name? I'm going to be terrible with these names. Yeah, Chi-Yu, Arbolivia, Gardevoir, and Scizor. Now, like I said, we are going to just lead off with our Iron Thorns. Now, going into this game, I really, really wanted to be adamant, but I wanted to outspeed a potential max speed Weavile, even though I didn't think max speed Weavile would come, or maybe even Weavile wouldn't come, which you see it didn't end up coming. I actually went jolly to outspeed that thing with my Scarf, and you're going to see it does kind of bite me in the ass right here. So Scizor leads, and this is a great position. I do live any hit this thing wants to go for, as it goes off for a seemingly banded Bullet Punch, and I do 93 with the Fire Punch, so I just missed it on the KO. I want to save health on it so I can pivot in on a hit later and maybe catch her off guard, as my Iron Moth does take a ton of damage, and I'm just going to throw off a Fiery Dance in case that thing wanted to stay in, and she would give it to me, but nonetheless, Chi-Yu does come in. I'm going to go Hydreigon as we see a Ruination right here. Now, Ruination, for those of you who don't know, it essentially works like Nature's Madness for the Tapus. They kind of got their own Nature's Madness type move. All of the new quartet, I don't know like what they're called, like, what we'd call the genies. They're like the forces of nature and things like that. I don't know what they're actually called, so keep that in mind. We're going to see Gardevoir switch it next as I do U-turn out. She probably went into this expecting me to think I was going to throw off a Draco to kind of revenge that Chi-Yu, but this gives us a free switch into our Iron Moth. I am going to sub up expecting Liv to switch out right here. She does end up staying in here to throw up a Trick Room, which tells me it's like Trick Room into like Ban Scizor offense, or like SD Tinkaton or something like that, or maybe just to catch my team off guard as if it's a little bit faster. So this thing is going to go ahead and throw off a Psyshock, and you see she set up this pretty freely because of the fact that I actually don't kill with Sludge Wave right here. So we're going to attempt to kind of stall out this Trick Room a bit. I'm going to make the mid-ground pivot of Azu. I could have gone Hydreigon, but if Liv made the ballsy play and went for a Moonblast, I can still rest up with Azu a little bit later. And what Azu does is it takes a Psyshock very well because we're physically defensive, and it forces this thing out because we can just Liquidation and kill it. We are going to be slower than this guy, no matter what. So out comes the Arbolivia right here. We see this physically defensive in this Rocky Helmet. Seed Sower is a new ability for it that essentially sets up grassy terrain whenever it's hit, whether that be physical or special, which I think is pretty cool, and we learned that today in this battle. I actually wouldn't have known that otherwise, so it's a pretty cool niche ability for it. As right here, we are going to get a little bit of recovery, though, which is obviously nice. Scizor is going to come in next as we double into Hydreigon here, or we switch into Hydreigon here, so Liv trying to force us out and kill us with a Banded Bullet Punch. I am going to pivot into Rotom. I feel like she's not going to make the prediction of going for a U-turn right there. Bullet Punch seemed pretty telegraphed. And from here, I can throw off a pretty darn free Volt Switch into the Arbolivia coming in. It would have knocked out the Scizor and obviously gives me pretty free momentum on this Arbolivia. Now, next up, I believe I do just throw off a quick Morning Sun. Nope, I throw off a Sludge Wave. That was an interesting play. Maybe expecting like an aggressive Quackleval, but regardless, next turn I am just going to throw off a Fire Dance, knock out this Scizor, get up to +1, which is nice as the Quackleval does come out. I am going to make the mid-ground pivot into Rotom. If this thing's like banded, it can 2-kill my Azu from there, and I can get up a rest with my Azu a little bit later. I am going to go ahead and Leaf Storm right here. Again, maybe Volt was my play, but I wanted to kill the Quackleval if it stayed in, and I didn't really know its bulk investment at that point. But the next turn, we are going to pivot Hydreigon. We are going to dodge a Will-O-Wisp and then be able to U-turn out as Liv actually elects to stay in right here, which is definitely very, very interesting. But I still feel like I have a pretty free pivot into my Azumarill as another Ruination comes out, and this is an opportunity in which I can get up my rest. I know the Arbolivia is pretty darn telegraphed, but my Azu is incredibly important the rest of this game. I'm going to make the pivot into Rotom. Not because I thought that a Volt Switch would come out, is because I think, now let me double check this because I don't want to sound like an idiot. I think Arbolivia gets Earth Power, and I did not want to get caught on my Volcarona with an Earth Power. It does get Earth Power, so I'm not tripping. I'm a smart guy. I didn't want to get caught with an Earth Power because, I mean, if you look at my Volcarona and you look at this team, it's, again, absolutely incredible. I'm going to keep calling it Volcarona. My Iron Moth, and you look at this team, it's absolutely incredible in the matchup. Like, it's very, very good. So I wanted to play a little bit safe, kind of pivot around, see what this thing's move pool was. I'm going to Volt Switch out here, set up the Seed Sower again, but I'm not too worried about Seed Sower going up. I'm Headlong Rush on my Great Tusk, so I'm literally just not punished by this at all. We do get in on a double leech, so that was a good play from Liv if she doesn't have Earth Power. She's going to go ahead and pivot in, as I do get off a Morning Sun, which is going to be really nice. And we are going to just be able to outspeed and pick a KO here. There's no longer a switch-in at all. I mean, there really wasn't a switch-in to begin with. She really does not have answers for this Pokemon. Out comes the Quackleval next. Now I have a very free pivot into my Azumarill, especially because I know this thing's set and I haven't taken much damage at all. So I'm going to be able to go out here as she goes out into the Tinkaton right here. I don't want to allow this thing free setup potentially as a Thunder Wave comes out, so I was pretty scared for a Swords Dance variant to come out, but Rotom does check this thing well still. We take that Gigaton Hammer with ease, are able to throw off a Will-O-Wisp, which is awesome, and then from here, I think I throw off a Thunderbolt in case you wanted to sack that off. But again, I'm completely fine with kind of letting my Rotom go down now. It served its purpose. It dies to every hit from everything minus this Pokemon, and I guess the Burn Tinkaton. So I throw off a Wisp just to kind of reduce this thing's recovery from the grassy terrain, and then I'm going to Volt Switch out into Hydreigon, trying to catch this thing. Unfortunately, it does catch me with yet another Leech Seed. A U-turn, take a little bit more Helmet, so maybe U-turn wasn't the best play, but again, we're whittling this thing down as a third Leech, or another, yeah, I think a third Leech Seed is going to come out. This thing hasn't clicked anything else. Iron Moth fortunately dodges, which is essentially going to give us the game at this point, because I am going to be able to sub down this thing's face. One, again, scouting for Earth Power, I guess, but not really scouting. I could have just killed the next turn if it came. Or being that it doesn't have Earth Power, it doesn't really have a way to break my sub. So I'm going to go out into my Volcarona. I'm going to click Fire Dance this next turn. This thing actually does end up living. Now, Liv was what do you call it, Tera Ground on this. I think she just kind of blanked and didn't click it right there. But she was supposed to click it there, and she probably would have been able to break my sub with like a Tera Blast or something like that. But because of the burn and the resist, Gigaton Hammer doesn't come close to breaking my sub. I get another boost right here. The Quackleval comes out. I'm just going to be able to Sludge Wave it, knock it out pretty freely, and then Arbolivia is going to come in as Id Tera Grasses, even though it wasn't her Tera captain. She did that for the forfeit win, or for the 3-0 forfeit loss instead of the 6-0. But we're able to 6-0 on our first like semi trying hard. I mean, not even like super try harding, but like, you know, our first ever like draft experience of Gen 9. We're actually able to get a 6-0, which is pretty cool. We played a good friend in Liv again. She's going to be linked in the description below. She's obviously not going to be uploading this. She only played one game. But she makes great content in general, and we're going to be Wi-Fi battling here pretty soon. So you should go check out Liv. She makes awesome content. But yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on to the semifinals game. Alrighty, y'all. Battle number 2 is going down, and we are going up against my good buddy, old pal, Mr. Amel. If you guys haven't checked out Amel before, again, he'll be linked down there too. Everybody we play in this tour is actually going to be a content creator, so we're leaking everybody down there. It's just how it ended up working out. We had some non-content guys in here too. But Amel is a great player, and he is the master of heat. And what a better guy to play than Mr. Amel here in a tour like this, where we're trying to figure things out, and he can bring some things that just catch me off guard and do me dirty. Now, Amel had, I believe it was, 4th pick, and a pretty nasty Pokemon ended up falling to him in Roaring Moon. You can see his team right there. It's Roaring Moon, Palafin, which is Tera Water, Rotom Heat, Clodsire, Screamtail, Breloom, Dunsparce, Corviknight, Cloth, Iron Jugulis, and Ice Cube, which is Tera Electric. Now, we're gonna have to face off against 2 very scary Tera captains. Palafin can be very scary. And again, this is just another matchup where it shows how good defensive Azumarill is going to be in this metagame, in my opinion. We have Roaring Moon, very much so checked by Azu. We have, especially because it's not a Terramon on his end, which is pretty interesting. I definitely would have Terra'd that Mon. We have Palafin, which is super checked by defensive Azumarill. We have, what do you call it? Why am I blanking on its name? Iron Jugulis, which is soft checked by it to a smaller extent. Cloth, which is checked, which isn't like a meta-defining Pokemon, but still scary. And then Ice Cube, which is also very much a check, which is other Terramon. Now, we do have to be careful about Tera Electric, but we can need that pretty well, because we're physically defensive. Again, Rest Talk, very simple set. We also are rocking out with a Choice Scarf Iron Moth here with Overheat, U-Turn, Dazzling Gleam, and Sludge Wave. Gleam is a great way to pick off Roaring Moon if it's unsuspecting and thinks it can knock us out from full, which it probably can. Really strong. We can overheat pretty darn freely in this game as well. There's not great fire resist. We have things like Rotom Heat and Palafin. So that's obviously nice. Sludge Wave is pretty free as well, being that Corviknight is the only pivot into it, and it doesn't want to take an overheat or it's going to die. We have a DD, Iron Thorn Tier, Chople Berry, where Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Dragon Dance, and Rock Slide. Bolt Beam coverage plus Rock Slide does really well in this matchup. Now, we do have to be careful about Clodsire being unaware, but Ice Punch can 2-hit KO Spadef variants, which is nice. And if he wants to be Water Absorb for Azu to just be the ultimate Azu counter, then we can obviously break through this thing at +1 and things of the like. I kind of struggled which item I wanted to put on this. I ended up going Chople for things like Corviknight Body Press, as well as the Breloom Mach Punch potentially coming our way. There are other things that can kind of pick us off priority, but if we can take those on, that's great. And I felt like I dealt with Palafin better than I dealt with Breloom, so I'd rather have the lure for Breloom than Palafin with like a Pasho Berry or something like that. So that's going to be Iron Thorns here. We have a lead Sash Frostlass here with Ice Beam, Taunt, Spikes, and Shadow Ball. Pretty simple stuff. Amel's team does not appreciate the spikes, and if we can taunt that Corfi, it doesn't really get to defog, and then we can kind of just Ice Beam it from them on out and really chip it down for our team. Then we have a Habanberry Stealth Rocking Hydreigon. I wish this was Roost, but it doesn't get Roost. It gets Stealth Rock now. Or Draco, Flash Cannon, Flamethrower, and Stealth Rock. Haban is to lure, again, the Roaring Moon. I don't expect a Scale Shot variant, and if so, he needs a lot of hits to Okos, because we're pretty darn bulky, as you can see. And we can Draco knock that thing out. We can also throw off big Flash Cannons on the Screamtail, which is nice, and then Flamethrower is great to hit things like the Corviknight, as well as the Breloom, if it wants to try and take us on. We can live one Breloom Mach Punch from full due to our bulk. And then lastly, we have the Wincon in Great Tusk. We are Weakness Policy, Great Tusk, with Close Combat, Rapid Spin, Bulk Up, and Headlong Rush. Now, this thing does really well. At +3, we actually Oko Fizz Def Corviknight after it Brave Birds us and takes a little bit of recoil. Guaranteed. That's what EVs are for and things like that. We are not too KO'd by Corys at all, as well, especially when we start bulking up and doing things like that. And once we bulk up and get a Rapid Spin off, there's really nothing he can do outside of Palafin. So we kind of, Palafin, what do you call it? Jet Punch. So we do need to take care of the Palafin. But if we're bulked up enough and he hasn't chipped us down, we can chew up a Jet Punch if it's not Tera or something like that. So Yeah, we'll see what we can do. I do like the squad a lot, though. I think it's pretty darn fun. And we can go ahead and jump on into our game against Mr. Amel here. You're going to see he's rocking out the Ice Cube, Screamtail, the Roaring Moon, the Breloom, Corviknight, and Clodsire. So we know that the Terramon is going to be the Ice Cube. And we see that there is no, what do you call it, Palafin, which means I'm glad we didn't go Pasho on our T-Tar, and it makes our Donphan endgame a lot easier. It also takes a lot of pressure off for our Azumarill. It really is only here to check the Salamence as well as a little bit of the Ice Cube. That being said, we're going to lead off the same way that we said we were going to before with our Frostlass. I'm going to elect to Ice Beam turn 1 in case this thing isn't a Sash variant, but when you see Breloom lead, it typically is Sash. It could have also been Scarf, but we would live a Rock Tomb due to our Focus Sash, and we could knock that thing out, potentially get a Spikes later, or at least be able to, sack off a Frostlass to gain a little bit of offensive momentum. He is going to Spore me, though. This next turn, I am going to try and burn a turn of sleep. I don't really want to switch into a Bullet Seed with anything, and as well as a Rock Tomb. Doesn't seem great. I do get lucky and get a second turn Wake here, and get up one Spike on the Breloom before going down, but Frostlass did its job, really. It got a lot of value. We could just go Iron Moth here and U-turn out, knock out the Breloom, and reset a little bit of tempo with the Hydreigon. The reason I want to go Hydreigon over really anything else is, one, I didn't want to allow Clodsire to come in on like my Iron Thorns and get up a bunch of hazards. I also didn't want to allow in the Corviknight to defog away my Spike, which is nice, and Hydreigon can kind of stop both. It could Flamethrower down a Corviknight. Only 8 Roost is really nice for that 1v1 scenario. I can also Stealth Rock up on it as well if you values getting off a U-turn or damage or something like that. We are going to see Screamtail come in right here. It is going to take a Spike. I'm going to turn 1 just off a Flash Cannon. They do wish, and we see how bulky this thing is. And this is going to be kind of my first mistake of this game, in my opinion. I can't calc these things yet. These Pokemon are not implemented into the calc yet. So in my head, I saw this thing's special attack stat. I saw how bulky my Hydreigon was, and I was like, word, I chew this. I'm going to throw off a Flash Cannon. Maybe this is a roll. I want to punish him for not protecting. As we're going to see, though, he does obviously outspeed me. And he does knock me out from full. So big mistake on my end. If I had a calc, I think I would have made a different play. I think I would have very much so just gone into my Iron Moth or something of the sorts, and went to town from there. Unfortunately, we did not. We're going to go on Iron Moth now, but you see this thing is really, really bulky. This Pokemon is very slept on, in my opinion. I don't know. It's not the strongest thing in the world, but it's incredibly bulky. This Iron Moth is very, very strong, obviously. So that just chewed up a 140 base power stab boosted super effective Sludge Wave with ease. It's going to Psyshock. Thankfully, we don't get knocked out despite our pitiful defense. In this next turn, I'm going to make a bit of an aggressive play. I'm actually going to double into my T-Tar. I know Amel's a good player, and I know he knows that Pokemon is all about resource management, and keeping an extra sack in a game where he's up 4-5 is incredible value for him. And he knows I'm Scarf because I just clicked Sludge Wave and outsped him. So I'm expecting him to pivot into his Corviknight to gain a lot of momentum, and I really can't allow that to happen. So I am going to make the double into my Iron Thorns here, as he does make the double into Corviknight himself. This is great. Now, this is where I should have kept up the aggressive play. This next turn, I am going to DD, which I do think is the correct play because I want to punish him for going for a defog and put myself in a good offensive position, as he does end up defogging away my Spike. Now, this turn, though, the Clodsire is obvious, man. I gotta make this Ice Punch play because, again, it gives me information on the set. And even if he's like a Water Absorb variant, I definitely 2-hit KO Fizdef at +1. And if he's an Unaware variant, I 2-hit KO Spadef variant. So you're gonna see later, he is a Spadef variant. He is Unaware, and I don't know that obviously right now, but I have to make the switch out. I'm gonna pivot into Ozzy right here on an Earthquake, and I'm gonna make a double out if he is going to be a, what do you call it, variant? If he's a Water Absorb variant, he's going to stay in and get up hazards right here. No shot anything else happens. So I'm actually going to make the play into Oramoth because it also covers a Corviknight pivot the next turn after. I'm going to throw off a big Overheat, and this confirms my suspicion that this is a super, super Spadef Clodsire. Like, incredibly Spadef on this thing. I'm going to make the Ozzy play as Amel makes a smart play getting up rocks, essentially eliminating Iron Moth from the game until Great Tusk can Rapid Spin that away. Now, Amel is going to go out into his Ice Cube right here. He's going to Terrasilize into an Electric type and then throw off a big Substitute. I think this is my next big mistake. What I think I should have done right here is I kind of was holding on to the Iron Moth a little bit too much. I think what I should have done is gone into Iron Moth and sacked it and then made the play I was going to make next, because you're going to see he does Tera Blast right here, as I do take 62%, which is pretty unfortunate. But this next turn, I am going to throw off a Liquidation, chip him down. I'm going to switch out and save and now sack my Iron Moth, because I realize I can still rest up on that Quagsire. Even not the poor Corvi definitely knocks me out. But I can still rest up on the Clodsire and get back up to full and still check something like the Roaring Moon. Whereas this thing is going to be a little bit harder to position back in, especially with the rocks up. I can never let up rocks again. And the check to this thing can get up rocks pretty darn easy. So that's really scary. And I kind of realized a little bit too late that Iron Moth is essentially dead at this point and useless. So I should have just sacked it initially. Not too big of a deal, as I'm going to go into Iron Tusk right here, which seems like a really interesting play. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to Rapid Spin this turn, because I know I live an Ice Spinner from this thing. And if I can get it to +1, I outspeed and I, kill everything from here. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I am going to take this Ice Spinner. I am going to get right up here, and I'm going to Rapid Spin up. We are at +2 at this point, which is incredible. I get up to +2, +2, +1, which is great. Next, again, this is just going to be kind of learning this generation as we go along. I make another big mistake. At this point, my weakness policy is procced. I don't need my fighting type anymore. I should always Tera Ground right here. Always, always, always Tera Ground right here. I don't know how the calcs would have worked out, because I'm looking right now. If I bulk up right here, I always live a Brave Bird, even when it's a fighting type, just because this Pokemon is so incredibly bulky. And at +3, a stab close combat knocks Corviknight out after Brave Bird recoil, like I said. So Brave Bird's going to come out. We do live on 33, but we get him down to 89. We knock him out with close combat, but it puts me in range of Helmet. And that's the unfortunate thing. We won this game immediately if we didn't die to Helmet. Now, I'm not too sure how it would have worked out if we just turned into a pure ground type. I think we would have won, though. I don't think that Brave Bird would have done quite literally any damage whatsoever. So I should have Terra'd there. I was kind of holding on to the fighting typing for no reason. It slipped my mind. I really don't have a good explanation for it. I think if we Terra there, we for sure win. But it just eluded me right there. And we're unfortunately going to go down. And at this point, the game is unfortunately over. I am going to go Azu right here. He's going to turn out to be Booster Energy Acrobatics Mence right here. I go out into Iron Thorns. He doesn't have Earthquake, so I don't immediately lose. Definitely thought I was going to. I creep this thing at +1 so that when I D-Dance up, I do knock him out with an Ice Punch. And the game is still technically possible. If I freeze the Clodsire or crit it, I will win the game. You're going to see the Clodsire just come out. Unfortunately, I don't get either, but I can't complain about that, to be completely honest. I am going to go down to an Earthquake. Maybe if I was Terra Flying on that thing too, I would have won, but that's Pokemon. So the big mistakes on my end, like, that was a very, very winnable game, but that's what these things are for, is to not only figure out these tiers, but also for the people who are playing them, figure out how to navigate this new metagame, because these are all new things, man. Dude, terrestrializing was the last thing on my mind when I was playing that turn. So yeah, you live and you learn. We do lose here, but I am going to go ahead and cover finals because I think it was a very interesting game, and I want to talk about it. So it's going to be Emil, who obviously just beat us, versus Jesse 504. So we're going to have some pretty unbiased commentary here. And yeah, that being said, let's jump into it. Alrighty, guys, here we are with finals. I don't really know what happens in this game. Like, I've seen who wins. I know who wins, but I didn't actually, like, really watch it. So I'm excited to kind of watch through this blind with you guys here and see who comes out on top and why. We obviously see Emil's team from before. This time he elected to bring the Palafin and no Ice Cube with Screamtail, the Roaring Moon, Corviknight, Clodsire, and Cloth, who is a very interesting Pokemon, having access to both Anger Shell, which is basically like a half smash, like a half shell smash plus $1 stats as an ability whenever it gets below half, or Regenerator, which is the best ability in the game. So more regen Pokemon, woo! Against Jaybear's team, who actually had first pick, I believe, first or second pick. And he took Fluttermane, which is looking to be an incredibly centralizing threat. He also has Dondozo, which throughout the tour proved to be a very solid defensive water with Unaware plus incredible bulk. So that thing is going to be really cool. Actually, I want to check and see its bulk, because I'm actually very curious to see how bulky this thing really is. Because I saw it take, like, it was Iron Valiant round 1, him versus its whatever, and Iron Valiant Terra Fairy, then threw off a Terra Fairy boosted Spirit Break, and it did 20-something%. It was absolutely insane. So I think Dondozo is actually a really, really cool threat. Yeah, 150 HP, 115 defense. So incredible physical tank. No recovery, but obviously it can rest talk up and be a big nuisance in that regards. So that's pretty darn cool. I'm excited to see that one work. Then we also have a very cool sun aspect to his team. Something that we didn't see on this team. He also has Skull Villain, as well as a Pokemon that benefits from the sun in Fluttermane with Photosynthesis, boosting its highest stat when sun is active. So Torkoal here is going to be solid. We have Toxtricity, which is one of his Terra captions. It is a Terra normal Toxtricity. Then we have, I think is it Ting Lu, which is a ground dark type with Vessel of Ruin, which halves or reduces the special attack of all of the Pokemon by 0.2 or 25%. And it's incredibly bulky physically wise and very strong. It can spike up. It's a very good Pokemon, like incredibly bulky, incredibly annoying tank. So that Pokemon's really, really cool as well. And then we have Iron, which one is it? Bundle, which is a very fast future Delibird with a ice and water type. It's only, the biggest downside to it, I think, is it only having Hydro Pump as special water stab, which is really annoying, but it gets Flip Turn, U-Turn as Freeze Dry. It can also obviously Ice Beam. It's very fast Taunt. It can Terra Blast if it is a Terramon. It's not in this instance, but that's fast Encore. So pretty cool. It has a very solid defense stat in 114 as well, 124 special attack. The rest of its stats are pretty bad, but still a solid Pokemon nonetheless. And yeah, that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump on into this and kind of react. We're going to see Toxtricity lead into the Clodsire, which is definitely really interesting. Now, typically, this would be a pretty damn good lead for Mr. Amel, but this is a Terra Normal Toxtricity, so I'm curious to see the numbers on this guy with normal Boom Burst here. We do see at Terra Normals, this is a Chalonberry Quag, and it takes 44. Now, the cool thing about him Terraing, too, is he's not going to die to Earthquake now. That was a crit. Only did 60. Now, from here, there's no switching. There's quite literally no switching. I'm pretty sure Corviknight gets to a KO. I'm pretty sure. Cloth comes in and takes 51 and then just dies to another. So that's pretty crazy. Now, I do know, again, when I heard this was a Max Spadef Assault Vest Cloth. Now, Cloth obviously isn't a, meta-defining, ridiculously bulky Pokemon, but Max Spadef AV on a Resist was just a raw 2-hit KO. That's terrifying. We are going to see Palafin come in right here and force the Toxtricity out, as it does Terra Water and throw off a big Jet Punch into the Rocky Helmet Dondozo, who absolutely chews that up for now. As it goes for a Yawn into the Corviknight, which is a very, very nice turn for Jaybear. He's going to get a pretty darn free switch into his Torkoal, eat up a Body Press here from, the Corvi, as Clodsire ends up coming out on the rock. So good aggressive turn by Amel getting that thing in, so it can either recover up or throw up spikes. Ting Lu is going to be next, as we do see yet another spike going up on Amel's side, so really getting hazard stacked at this point. Amel makes a nice solid double into the Palafin. I'm presuming expecting something. He expects the Toxtricity trying to get him a sleep turn, which is nice. Jaybear sacks off the Tox. I actually don't think he needed to do that. He can still super take advantage of the Corvi or the Clodsire coming in, but at the end of the day, he doesn't super need it, so that's nice, obviously. Next up, Iron Bundle is going to come in. Remember, it has a very solid physical defense stat. Now, this is a 0 to hero Palafin, though. It is most likely Choice Band, throwing off a Terra Water Jet Punch, doing, 47% into a really solid defense stat Resist. And it does go down. We are going to see Photosynthesis come out here with the booster energy, as a Hydro Pump from Iron Bundle comes out. It throws off a Wish, but it's not enough to keep it away from Hydro Pump into Ice Beam. So Iron Bundle going crazy here with the Pork Drive, also being booster energy. Then we see a Photosynthesis Speed right here, showing this is a very bulky Salamence getting a speed boost opposed to an attack boost. Flutter Mane's going to come out, though, show to be Choice Scarf, knock out this Salamence, and then from here, Jaybear is just in a very, almost unlosable position. I don't think he can beat Dondozo at this point. I don't think he can beat Ting Lu at this point. Dondozo plus Ting Lu plus Torkoal just wins this game and wraps it up. So Jaybear is actually going to win this one pretty handily right here. Ting Lu's going to come in. I think Amel kind of concedes defeat. I don't want to drag on a Speed Tour game here, as he is just going to take Earthquakes. Corvi's going to come out. We see Torkoal come out and just throw off a couple Lava Plumes, knocking it out, and winning the Speed Tour. I know Jaybear is actually going to be winning this run, so if you want to see like him use other mods like this, like again using Scoville or using the Flutter Mane more and things like that. I know he had a game, he told me, where he I didn't watch it because I went to go make food after I lost my game, but his semifinals game, he brought a Terra Fire Scovillain, and in the sun, Terra Fire boosted with a nasty plot up, or a growth probably. He Oko to Salamence from full with the Terra boost. So there's some pretty cool Terra application in his games. Let me know what you guys thought. The main consensus that we came to in all of our games, right, is we came to the consensus that we have too many points, right? We came to the consensus that Terra is scary and very strong. We also came to the consensus that we need to learn these mechanics more and really take our time in this early gen and realize when to Terra, when to not Terra, and things like that. Iron Bundle was great. We learned we need to move some Pokemon up, like Ting Lu will be moving up in our tier list. Dondozo will be moving up in our tier list. We had Graveyard ridiculously low. It didn't end up doing anything with Tour, but we will be moving that up in our tier list. So we learned a lot of cool things throughout this. Let me know if you guys would want to see more content like this, more like kind of figuring out the Draft League format through these speed tours. I know we're at least going to be learning one more. I don't know how many more though, but it's a good way to kind of tie this over on draft content until the new games come out, or the new format kind of officially starts. The game comes out. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought. I appreciate you watching.